everybody. This is Helena Hart. Welcome back to my Master Your Magnetism podcast. I'm talking with Madeline Charles again today. She's a licensed psychotherapist, dating and relationship coach who helps anxious and avoidant daters find secure, lasting relationships. Welcome, Madeline. Thanks for talking with me again today.
Hi, Helena. I love being here. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
I always love our conversations, and we have a great topic for everyone today. We're going to be talking about the power of non-attachment when it comes to dating and relationships. And when you detach from the outcome of any interaction you have with someone, it actually makes you magnetic to the love and relationship you want. And I know you have 4 secrets you wanted to share with everyone today. But before we get into that, I know you're hosting a free series called the Irresistible Woman series, something I was a part of. And it's 100% free, no strings attached for women in my community. That will be the first link in the show notes if you want to claim your spot, and that's starting soon. Anything you want to say about that, Madeline, before we get started?
Yeah, so this is actually season 10 of the Irresistible Woman series, and this is a really special time to join us. We're going to have over 20 of the world's top leading dating and relationship experts that are going to be offering you completely free, tailored advice that's really going to move you forward in your love life, whether you are single or partnered. And you're also going to receive over 20 free gifts. So it's like a virtual goodie bag, and it's just a great way to have access to this wealth of information at your fingertips and join thousands of women online on the same journey. And we would love to see you there.
Great. I love the interview we did for that series. So that will be available free for everyone. So make sure to click that link to join. And let's get into this topic, Madeline. What's the first thing you wanted to share on how to detach from the outcome and not have this grippy, anxious energy when it comes to dating and relationships?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to start with is really creating this body awareness. And so, if anyone's listening, I want you to understand that I very much have moved through being a grippy, anxious dater myself. So, I know what it's like. And one of the biggest things I've seen to support you in moving into being more of a secure, magnetic, feminine embodied woman is to have that body awareness. So, you can just even notice as you're moving through your love life these days, what happens in your body when something isn't going exactly the way you're hoping. So, you can notice, like, oh, I'm checking the dating app a lot, or I'm checking my phone to see if I've gotten a response from this guy, or I'm out and about trying to enjoy my day with my girlfriends or on a solo date. And I can't help but look around and kind of scan the room to see, is there someone here that I should be talking to? I don't want to miss my opportunity. So what happens in your body when you get into that state? Does your heart start racing? Does your stomach feel a little clenched? Do you start feeling a little bit sweaty? Your thoughts start racing. So creating that body awareness is really the first fundamental step for you to be able to create a shift, because we're going to talk about some different ways to think, some different action steps, but everything comes back to the body. And the more you can kind of catch those body-based signals up front, the easier it's going to be for you to say, oh, okay, I think that my body's reacting to something. There's something kind of triggering me and getting me stuck here. Let me look at what that is. And so often we're going to have that body awareness before our cognitive mind can give us the story and give us the cues. And so if you can look at, oh, wow, I noticed when I go on the dating apps, for instance, I start feeling a little bit like my heart's racing. Okay, what's that about? Or, I get home from a date and gosh, I feel antsy. Okay, so start noticing those things, connecting those dots, and that's going to open up so much for you. And I'll just give you some common examples here while we're on this topic of understanding what your body is communicating. So a lot of times, like I mentioned, if you're single, you might feel a little bit annoyed that men aren't responding, or they're not planning the next date, or they're not following through. They're not getting back to you fast enough. And so what happens in those moments for you and your body? If you're partnered, maybe you find yourself getting kind of nitpicky with your guy, like he's not doing things the way that you want, or he's not listening to you, or you feel like you're just kind of hyper focused on the things that he's falling short on. They're not living up to your standard. And so maybe you feel kind of short. Maybe you don't really want to be affectionate or intimate because this guy's getting under your skin. So like, what happens there for you in those instances? It's probably easy to notice, oh yeah, here's the scenario, but I want you to go a little bit deeper to say, oh, my body's really communicating something to me. And if I can slow down and listen, then I can get underneath the story and really tend to the part within me that needs some support, rather than just being externally focused and fixated on what a guy is or isn't doing and getting caught up in attachment around something that you don't actually have control over.
That is so good. I'm so glad we're starting with this one. I have no idea what these 4 secrets are, by the way. And so this is phenomenal. I talk a lot about getting out of your head and into your body. And like you said, it can be so easy to just go right up into your head and have these spinning thoughts of what he should be doing. Or maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I pushed him away. When really, if you can notice something like my shoulders feel really tight right now, it really brings your awareness back to yourself. I always talk about taking your focus off of the man and putting it back on yourself and what's going on with you in your life and your body. Is there anything else you want to say on this first one, or should we move into number 2?
Yeah, number one is that body-based awareness. So moving into secret number 2 here, which is that when we feel overly attached to an outcome, when we are really stuck on thinking that things should be going a certain way, I have really come to understand, like I mentioned through my own personal experience and now helping so many women with this, there's often an attempt at just wanting to feel in control, that attempt at control in disguise. So when you feel grippy, when you feel really stuck on something, I want you to slow down as you're noticing your body-based awareness, where it's like, okay, is there a part of me that really wants to feel some control right now? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's so human. But when you can see it for what it is, it gives you more choice. It gives you more agency and more freedom to create the outcome that you want, not necessarily by forcing your way there, but by actually breathing into it and creating some spaciousness around it. So when you see, okay, there might be a part of me that thinks that things should be happening differently than the way they are, that's where I experience this internal friction. This is where I start to drop my vibe and my energy plummets and I feel really constricted. And then, of course, when you're operating from that highly attached place in your love life, chances are you have come to see that that doesn't create the outcome that you actually want. And so instead of focusing on things outside of yourself that you can't control, like when you're going to hear back from him, if he asks you out again, if there's going to be someone great on the dating app today, whatever it is, if your partner is going to remember to take out the trash, I want you to, like Helena was saying, refocus that energy back onto yourself and ask yourself, what's actually within my power right now? What do I have control over? If I'm seeking that control externally, it's that reminder that, okay, there's actually something within that I can focus on instead that's going to be more productive and produce the type of outcome that I'm looking for. So you might ask yourself, okay, what options have I not yet considered? Or what have I not really followed through on yet? Or how can I approach the situation from a different perspective? So a lot of times we get fixated on like, I want things to be this certain way, or we get really attached to the timeline about when we're supposed to meet someone. And we forget that there's more opportunities, there's more possibilities, but when we get so hyper-focused, we miss that. And so it's like, oh, I thought that I could only meet men online. Oh, I forget that there's so many opportunities in person or vice versa. Or, oh yeah, I went to that one meetup group that one time, but I didn't meet anyone great there. I haven't gone back. Maybe it's worth a second chance. Or, okay, I've been trying to get my partner to show up differently for me, but when I nag him and I remind him that things aren't working, that doesn't really motivate him. So is there a different approach I could use in my language and my energy? So when you're focusing back on yourself, you're creating more options, and that's where things really can open up and you can arrive at that desired outcome, but in a much more fluid way.
Absolutely. And this really would make you more magnetic to anything you want in all areas of life. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here because I don't know the last 2 secrets you're going to share, but I just wanted to mention that this could really help you slow down. Like you said, I can really understand the tendency to feel urgent, like you want to make something happen and jump into action when things aren't going the way you were hoping they would in your love life, especially. So this can really help you to slow down, get into your feminine energy, get into your body. And that's where that resistance between you and the other person can clear up. That's when you can feel him start to come towards you. But it's just interesting because it feels like we should be doing something in those moments. This might sound a little counterintuitive to someone who is used to jumping into action and trying to fix things and make things right and get things on track the way that they want them to be. But this is actually a much better way to go. Do you agree?
Yes. And this approach that we're talking about, it requires a greater level of self-awareness and what I call feminine self-leadership, where you're like, okay, I see myself on a trajectory that's not feeling good in my body. It's not creating the results I want. So what is within my control? What is available to me? And sometimes there can be that kind of wounded inner little girl within us that's like, I want this man to show up differently. He should just know what I want. There can be a little bit of like internal tantrum. And it's like, okay, you get to have have that, but moving her out of the driver's seat so that she's not the one calling the shots and hijacking things for you internally. So yes, really looking at what's within your control. So the third secret here really kind of piggybacks off what I was just saying, but it's to be mindful of black and white thinking, which is so easy to slip into. I see this all the time with my clients. So for anyone listening and feeling highly attached to an outcome, notice your language when you are saying things like, oh, this always happens or never works out. That kind of blanket statement of always or never gets us into this limited view where we feel like we don't have a lot of options. We feel like things aren't going to work out for us. So when we can zoom out and come to that place of, I'm going to let that go. That doesn't really work for me. Is that actually even true? Let me find evidence of how that's not even true, right? Then you're like, okay, there might be this outcome that I'm really seeking and fixated on, but I can see that things do actually work out for me. I can see that me being in black and white thinking is just another attempt at me trying to create that internal safety. Because if it never happens, if it's never working out, or if this thing is always happening, then we can feel like, oh, okay, that's a safe thing for my mind to kind of rest on. But in the nuance, in the gray area, and the like, okay, but maybe not yet, or maybe things are playing out differently than you even can fully comprehend right now, that does require a higher level of emotional intelligence. It requires more emotional regulation. It requires you to, slow down and take a deep breath. So that's what I encourage everyone to tap into. It gets us out of that mental chatter and those ways that we can kind of get stuck with our thoughts that just amplifies the grippy energy, the attachment, and seeing how we can work our ways out of that.
I love what you said there. That is so powerful. I can look back in my own life and see when I've been really attached to an outcome of a certain interaction with a man or a certain thing happening on a very specific timeline that I just made up for myself. It just never really worked out the way I wanted. It's when you release that attachment to the outcome or the result. That's when what you want can start making its way to you. Like I mentioned before, there's not all this resistance and struggle and trying to make it work. All of these things that we do when things aren't going the way we were hoping that they would. And so I love everything you're saying here. Is there anything else you want to mention on this third one, or should we move into number 4?
Yeah, I think we can move into number 4, which again, is just kind of playing off everything we've already been building up to. And so number 4 is looking at times in your life when things have worked out better than you could have imagined. So I guarantee when you look back, it's like, oh yeah, I really wanted that job, or I really wanted to have a loving relationship, or I wanted to have this health transformation, or whatever it may be. There have been times in your life where you had a desire, you had something that you were calling into manifesting, and it arrived into your life better than you could have imagined, even easier, and in ways that you probably could not have foreseen. And I think that we sometimes lose sight of this, or we think, oh, well, I've had success in my career, but love is different. We kind of discredit the manifesting process and how it is universal. And so if you've had success in other areas, you really get to leverage that when it comes to your love life. And you get to say, I've allowed myself to be surprised by life rather than be set on this specific outcome. And a lot of times women will think like, here's a great guy I've attracted. I got to make it work with him or else. And there's all of this unnecessary pressure because when we look at it, it's like, well, I'm at a certain age and I feel like the dating pool is shrinking, or I live in a certain area and it's slim pickings here, or whatever it is. You put these parameters on your manifestations and it actually closes off the options. And so it's never actually about that one particular guy being the one. It's about, let's create some breathing room here and let's remind ourselves that things have worked out for you better than you could have imagined. And the same is going to be true here. As long as you don't create those parameters, like I said, around like, the pool is shrinking and this is my one shot, that does create that grippy energy that actually repels what we want. But if we're like, I'm letting go of the timeline, maybe I've not had great dating experience in my area yet, but that doesn't mean that that's what's always going to be. And so it's also then no longer using your past as evidence of what's possible for your future, but being able to say, okay, that's what's happened. But when I look ahead, I get to decide who I'm being as I interact with life in every moment of my future. And so that's going to create a different outcome for myself. And that kind of speaks to what we've been talking about here of being in that feminine self-leadership, really looking at what's within your control. And it's so much about how you're showing up. So not discrediting that, and also not discrediting the previous manifesting success that you've had in your life and seeing how that applies to love as well.
That is so great. I think there's this tendency, I know I was certainly this way in my past, where you kind of have it all figured out in other areas of your life. You can look back and see where one thing led to another and everything unfolded so beautifully in these other areas. But when it comes to love and relationships, that can seem like this separate thing. And then you can create these identities like, well, I'm just the person who's unlucky in love. I'm the person who attracts terrible men. Do you see that as well in clients or women in your community? They just see their love life as this higher ticket item or this separate thing that's much harder than other areas of life?
Totally. Yeah. And I get it. Love is a specific type of skill set. And so while climbing the corporate ladder or having professional success might come more easily to some women, love is a learned skill. Like it's something that you can develop. Although you can say, hey, I've had great success in other areas of my life, love is no different in terms of being able to call it in, being an energetic match for it, all of those steps that are applicable across the board. I do think it's important to take love off the pedestal. Like you were saying, Helena, sometimes we can feel like it's this elusive thing that some women get to have and others don't. And that's simply not true. And so the more pressure we put around it, the more we feel like it's this thing that's out of reach and it's something we've got to figure out and we can't quite grasp. Like the more we amp it up in that way, the further it's going to feel. And so if we're like, okay, this is something that I'm learning how to navigate and I'm getting better every day and my past doesn't define me and there's new opportunities all the time and really getting into that place of seeing things differently, seeing things through a more expansive lens, you're going to get into that positive snowball effect where things start opening up to you and bringing us all the way back to step one of noticing what's going on in your body. When you are in that more expansive state of like, oh my gosh, anything could happen. Today could be the day where everything clicks into place. I'm getting closer than ever. That's a very magnetic, energetic state where unexpected opportunities and people and synchronicities are going to be flowing into your life. And so if you can make that energetic shift, which does require tremendous trust and faith, you're going to see things really open up. But I keep coming back as well to that feminine self-leadership piece. And that's part of it, right? It's like walking the path without exactly knowing where it's leading, but being in trust, being in faith, and being open to things working out better than you could have imagined.
That is so beautiful. I kind of just want to end on that powerful note. I definitely love to recap these 4 secrets for everyone. And then any last words of wisdom you'd like to share on this topic, I'd love to hear them.
Awesome. Yeah. So step one was that body-based awareness, understanding what's coming up in your body when you're feeling triggered and you're feeling stuck and grippy, dropping below the neck to start to create that awareness and kind of get ahead of it before things feel really intense. Number 2 is to understand that attachment to an outcome is often just you wanting to feel control. And that makes so much sense. You're not wrong for that. However, it's misdirected control. And so if you can put that energy back on yourself, that's where things are really going to open up. So it's less about what a man is or isn't doing, and it's more about that feminine self-leadership piece about how you are guiding yourself to a better feeling state and a different way of thinking. So step 3 then is being mindful of that black and white thinking, that phrasing around this always happens or it never works out for me or whatever that might look like for you, really catching that and seeing that that limits yourself so much. And so busting beyond the black and white, really being comfortable in the gray area, the nuance, all of that is going to open things up for you. And then the 4th step is looking back at your life and seeing the times where things have worked out better than you could have imagined, letting yourself be surprised by life, seeing that it's always this or something better. And so when you can look at what have been the steps that have allowed me to bring in the things that I want, you've probably seen, oh, I kind of had the sense of, yeah, it's going to happen eventually. I feel relaxed around it. I feel confident around it. I feel certain around it. And that's what you can infuse into your love life to enjoy the process and not be attached to a specific outcome along the way.
Love it. Thank you for that recap. We could probably do a whole episode on each one of these. This is just so powerful. There's so much to talk about here. And for people who want to go deeper, do you want to talk one more time about the Irresistible Woman series? Again, that's 100% free for women in my community. That will be the first link in the show notes.
Yes. So like I mentioned, this is the 10th season of us doing this. So we have a blast with thousands of women all around the world. What you do when you join is you have access to over 20 incredible world-renowned love and dating experts that are going to give you their top tips to help you powerfully move forward in your love life, especially if you feel anxious or avoidant in dating. This is going to be phenomenal for you. You also receive over 20 free gifts. And so you're going to have so many free tools and resources to run with and really see immediate changes in your love life and set you up for a powerful end of the year.
Great. And that's completely free, right? No strings attached?
That's right.
Perfect. So, like I mentioned, that'll be the first link in the show notes. This was phenomenal. Madeline, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say before we close out here today?
I just want to say, coming from someone who has been super attached and grippy in love before, I want you to know that it's completely possible to shift out of this and to be in a more trusting, relaxed, receptive energy in love and in life. And if you've enjoyed these tips, there's so much more ahead inside the Irresistible Woman series. So I really hope to see you inside of there with Helena and I.
Yes, I really enjoyed being a part of it. And I loved having you on my podcast today. I'd love to bring you back on for more episodes in the future. I know our episodes have been some of the favorites with my audience. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope we can do this again soon.
Of course, this is a blast. Thank you.
You're very welcome anytime. And for everyone listening, make sure you're following my podcast. Just click the follow button on my podcast homepage so you don't miss any new episodes. And feel free to leave me a rating or write a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if my podcast episodes or videos have been helpful for you. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks again, Madeline. I hope to talk to you soon. The biggest mistake women make when a man is hot and cold, acting distant, or pulling away is something called a connection barrier, and it only pushes him further away. If you'd like to read about what a connection barrier is so you don't accidentally make it, go to forever1234.com. Again, that's forever1234.com.